morning, everyone, properly. So we are singing To Life L'chaim, which is a very Jewish song from Fiddler on the Roof. And we are making a dish today called cholent, or chaunt, as my mother calls it, or chaunt, as my husband Danny calls it, but I call it cholent. And what it is, it's a very, very old traditional Jewish dish because it was used by people who didn't want to cook on the Sabbath, which is Friday night and Saturday. So it would go into the oven before the Sabbath began at sunset on Friday, and it would stay there all night, and they would take it out the next day for lunch on Saturday, and we didn't have to do a thing. So it was a perfect dish for those people who didn't want to work, and cooking includes work on the Sabbath. I love it because it's got the flavours of my childhood in a way. This recipe is a very Ashkenazi version. It's very much about the fried onions and the salt and the potatoes and the meat. And there's no other spices in it. It's very simple, and some people would consider it too plain. You can add lots of things to pimp this up. You can add paprika to add a bit of oomph. You can add marrow bones. You can add carrots. You can add different spices. There's all sorts of things you can do to make it a more you version. This is a very me version, okay? Beans, potatoes, meat, salt and onion. That's pretty much what's in it. And it's really the things that I love. As far as Yom Kippur goes, so tomorrow is the Day of Atonement, which is Yom Kippur. It's the day we, Jewish people are supposed to atone for all our sins and repent. It's the one day it's a day when we fast and say all our sorries and start again the next day. And of course, because for us it's always about the food, we have a big feast to start the fast so that by 6 o'clock tonight we'll all be going, oh my God, I've eaten so much. And then we starve all day and complain about how hungry we are. And then at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, or at 6:29 p.m. if you're in Sydney, you eat more than you need to eat so that you go to bed just wishing you hadn't done that. And that's what happens every year. And every year we say, next year I'm not going to eat a lot to break the fast. Next year I'm just going to have a boiled egg and a piece of toast. Next year I'm just going to have a little bowl of salad. We've all said that, right? And do we ever do it is the question. Some people hate the idea of breaking the fast on meat and beans and potatoes. I get that, it's heavy. So you don't have to use it to break the fast. I just thought this was a nice time of the year to share this recipe with you. Yes, Melbourne is a bit later. You start later, and everyone everywhere has to check the time that their fast starts. Ours starts at 5:29 p.m. today, and I think finishes at 6:29 p.m. tomorrow. It's a 25-hour fast. All right, let's talk about this cholent. It comes from a person very dear to my heart and very dear to my family, Yvonne Fink, who sadly passed away a few years ago. She was, Yvonne and her husband Leon were my parents' best friends, and they were very much part of our family life growing up. And I'll tell you more about her and her cholent when we're cooking the onions, because I want to get started. Okay, so back to Yvonne a little bit later, because it's a really lovely story to tell. Let's talk about what's in this cholent. Okay, so we've got dried beans. I've got red kidney beans, not many left, and I have dried lima beans, which are the big white ones. You could use dried cannellini, dried navy beans, anything you like bean-wise. I just like these two because they're different sizes and different colours. And of course barley, which I love, and I'm just using this pearl barley. People said they couldn't find beans during the week and are going to use the Mackenzie 12 bean mix, which I think would be absolutely fine. Okay, so we need a half a cup of white beans, a third of a cup of red kidney beans, and a third of a cup of barley. And what I did last night is I put them in a big bowl and covered them with just tap water, and they just sit there all night. Now, if you haven't soaked them, it's fine. They'll still cook perfectly. But they say that if you don't soak your beans and then you cook them, they're going to make you a bit gassy. And none of us really want to be gassy and farty, do we? Especially when we're in lockdown and we're all living in the same house all day. So I think it's a good idea to soak them if you've got time. Okay, so I've soaked mine, and in a minute I'm going to rinse them. We need 3 small onions or 2 large onions, which I've chopped pretty roughly. I mean, they're really just going to dissolve into this dish anyway by the end of it. So I've got my dried beans and barley soaking. I've got 2 or 3 onions depending on the size. I've got a little bit of oil. You can use olive oil, you can use, I'm going to add olive oil just for a little bit of extra flavour, or you can use regular unflavoured oil, that's fine. We're going to need a bit of meat. Now, the original recipe called for brisket and top rib, or rib of beef cut across ways, so the bones are short or small. I've just changed it this time to make it a bit easier, and I'm just going to use 1 piece of well marbled brisket. This is about 400 or 500 grams, and I'm going to cut it up in a minute, and I'll show you how. It's really important to cut it across the grain before we put it in. The one I've got in the oven that I started yesterday, I actually did beef rib on the bone. I got it from Field to Fork, Sydney people. They did it beautifully. So it's a really well marbled, beautiful piece of beef on the bone, cut into each rib, which is about that big, is cut in half. And I've put those 6 pieces in the bottom, but I'll show you when I take it out. That's the beef. Then we need 2 small waxy potatoes, something that is not going to fall apart. You want it to hold its shape. And I love what happens to the potatoes in this dish. They just get this sticky, flavoursome, amazing texture. I just love it. These are probably a little bit big, so I'm going to trim them and make them a bit smaller. That's all I've got. And we need salt and boiling water. So the way that Yvonne used to salt this, she would get 2 cups of water in a jug like that and add salt. We'll talk about that when we do it, and pour that salted water over the dish before we bring it to the boil. That's the way we salt it. Okay. Can someone tell me if I'm freezing for everybody or if it is just stitching in the kitchen? Because sometimes it is you, not me. Don't mean that rudely. It's hard to tell if it's you or me. If it's me, I can change to 4G like I did yesterday. Just let me know. Anybody else, am I freezing? It's just such a hard thing to tell whose problem it is, you know? You know what I mean by problem. Okay, all good. Let me know if it freezes again and I'll switch over. It's hard to tell. All right, thanks, Carm in Canada. All right, so we've got all the ingredients ready. The dish we need is at least a 3 litre. I said 3 litre, but if you're using meat on the bone, you're going to probably need a bigger one, okay, because it just expands so much. And great, thank you everybody for giving me that feedback. Excellent. So I'm using this one, which is the 3 litre one that we love, you know, the Swiss Diamond 3 litre 24 centimetre casserole. That might be just the right size. I did it, the other one I did in a Le Creuset. It's probably about a 5 litre, which is a really good size for it. I'll show you when I get it out. You can do it all in one pot, in the sense that what we're going to do is we're going to fry the onions, we're going to take them out, and then we're going to prepare the other ingredients, and then layer them all, pour the water over, and then cook it. It's up to you if you want to fry your onions in a separate fry pan, but there's really no need. So I'm going to just do them in this fry pan now, and as they're frying, I will tell you more about the other ingredients, what we're going to do, and talk to you about the story from Yvonne. I wanted to say one more thing, which was, I can't remember, but it will come to me. So let's start by frying off the onions, okay? So I'm putting my pot onto high. You know, I always start on high. And I'm going to add in a couple tablespoons of oil. Robin, yes, you can absolutely do it in the slow cooker. It's a really good thing to do in the slow cooker, I think. It's actually made for the slow cooker, I think. Okay, so I'm going to put in a couple tablespoons of oil. Because I want these onions to be beautifully fried, okay? This is a very, I'm going to say stodgy, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. This is a very stodgy, hearty dish, and you know, you need a lovely light green salad on the side and some steamed veggies, because there's none of that in this, okay? But this is a beautiful dish that just reminds me of the old world. Of course, the old world that I never knew, but that I dream about, or, you know, have been told stories by my father of his life, early life in Poland with his mother, who was an amazing cook. This is the sort of dish that would be put on the Saturday lunch table, and they'd all sit around and eat it together. And I just love that thought. Okay, so I'm going to put my onions in once my oil is getting a bit hot. I didn't hear a sizzle, but anyway, I'm going to prematurely. I always like to hear that sizzle when I put the onions in. It's starting to sizzle now when I put them in. So we've got 2 big onions or 3 small ones. I've halved the recipe from the original and it was huge. I make it in my giant le creuset. So if you're feeding a crowd in the future when we feed crowds again, it's just a great crowd dish, okay? Because it's really easy to make and it feeds a crowd so easily. And there's nothing to do once it's in the oven. It's really nothing, and that's what I love about it. All right, we'll just get rid of this. Okay, so while the onions are cooking, I'm going to just give them a stir. I'm going to keep it on high for a couple minutes just to get them going. The onions I want for this dish are, I'm not cooking them all the way because they're going to cook for so long, but I want them to be a little bit golden on the edges and start to cook. They will continue to cook in the cholent because there's no tomatoes or anything acidic that's going to stop the cooking of the onions. Okay, so we're not so pedantic about our onions today as we would be if we were making a tomato sauce or a soup, but we must cook them all the way through, okay? We don't have to here so much. Onions are on. Okay, good question. It is from this book, The Feast Goes On, our second book. And it is called Yvonne's Cholent. And it's in the chapter called Tradition, which is my favourite chapter. Yum, I love it. And I'm going to read you her story in just a minute because it's just lovely. Okay, onions are frying away. Now you need to take your beans and your barley, if you've soaked it, and you need to go to the sink and you need to drain it. Take any little stones that you see or that have floated to the top and just give it a rinse under the water and then they're ready to use, okay? So I'm just going to do that here out of sight for 1 sec. You will hear me doing it. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to tip it out and just give it a quick rinse and then put them back in. Okay. So I have drained and rinsed my legumes. I'm just going to give this a nice stir. Yum, smells great. Don't you just love the smell of frying onions? It's just one of my favourite all-time smells. Love it. Okay, let's talk meat. So, if you've got the meat on the bone, as I said, you have your butcher cut it up into pieces about that big. This brisket here, I want you to see how it's got the lines that go that way, okay, which is the grain, and I want to cut it across the grain. The thing with brisket though is that it comes in 2 parts, so I actually am going to cut it in half because this way goes across the grain that way, the grain goes that way, and this way the grain goes that way. So what I want to do is cut them up differently, okay? If you just got the deckle of the brisket, the grain will be going one way, okay? But I want you to see that that's what makes brisket a challenging meat to cook. You can see the lines on that. It's very clear which way the grain is going. And in this one, it's also very clear which way the grain is going. So I'm just going to cut each of those into maybe 3 big pieces. I don't want it, I'm not looking for bite size here. I want big pieces of meat. That's actually fine like that. And this one I'm going to cut in half and then across, okay? Because I just want to shorten those long strands of meat. Otherwise you end up with stringy long bits of meat, which is not very palatable. So I'm just cutting them up. I'm leaving a bit of the fat on. And you really want good, well-marbled meat if you can. It just adds a better flavour. Look at the grain and cut across, okay? So I've ended up with 6 pieces of meat, and I've also cooked it with the whole brisket in the bottom, which is also fine. But I do prefer, it's less stringy if you do it this way. Okay, so I've cut it up into nice big pieces, and I'm going to put those in. That's the meat done. I'm going to give this a stir. Yep, they're starting to brown, which is great. I don't need to add any seasoning yet because I'm going to add the salt water, which is going to be the seasoning for it. Now I need to cut up just move my meat here. I need to cut up my potatoes. I'm just going to trim it because they are too big, and I will use those for something else later. So imagine we've got 2 small potatoes, which I'm now going to peel and cut into pieces. And I'll show you the size that I'm doing in a sec. I'll just peel them first. Is anyone cooking along with me today? I wonder. I want to talk to you about the timing of it. So I'm going to turn this down now. If you're cooking and you really want to finish the fast with it, Rob and I don't seal the meat or sear the meat at all. It just goes in. It sort of sears. You'll see in a minute what I do, okay? So my onions are just about done. They're really becoming golden around the edges, and I think they're almost ready. I'll give them another minute. Right, okay. So if you're cooking along and you want it to finish the fast with and to be ready at its best at the end of the fast, let's say 6:30 p.m, then I suggest you don't put it in the oven till maybe, if you can wait till sort of 5 o'clock today. I think that would be really great if you can do that. Mine's been cooking, and you'll see it since 9 o'clock yesterday morning. I put it in at 9:15. So have a look at mine. I want to have a judge of whether it's too long. So it's been in for like 25 hours. I did turn it down to 80. I turned it down to 80 this morning. We'll talk about that in a second when we look at mine and see what we think. I'm not sure if it can really overcook, whether 25 hours makes a difference or 28's worse or 22's better. It is a very slow cooked dish, and everything in there has been cooked for a long time. And I don't know the answer, so we'll work it out together. So people that want it for the fast, just hold off on it, on putting it in the oven till we make a decision. You can actually layer everything together, and then I'll tell you when to hold off. Okay, now these potatoes, I know it's hard to see because of the writing, but I'll show you. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to cut it in half downwards like that, okay, in half, and then I'm going to cut it into 3, okay. So I want the pieces to be sort of that size. I've got each potato's being cut into 6. You don't want them too small, you don't want them too big, you just need to get them just right. Okay, so I've cut each potato into 6, so I've got 12 pieces of potato. I'll leave those there. My onions are ready, okay, they can come out. I'm just going to pop them into a bowl. I'm going to try something new today. Traditionally, hello Rodney, just doing a thing. That's all right. Sorry, excuse me. You know, it's busy here. People are coming and going. What can I say? Okay, so I'm just going to put my onions into a bowl just to the side for the moment. Okay, and we talked about searing meat. I'm actually not going to sear it, but I am going to put them in a minute into the hot pan. But before I do that, I'm just going to turn it off for 1 second while I talk. I'm going to try and add eggs in today. It's a thing to put in eggs. I've washed them because I'm going to put them in the shells, and I'm going to slip them into the cholent, and I'm going to leave them in. And apparently tomorrow night I'll take them out, take them out of the shell and put them back in. They take on the flavour and they go dark, and it's sort of a strange thing, but I thought it would be worth trying it. Anyone feel like trying some eggs with me, seeing what you think? Thought it was an interesting experiment, okay? So, just to check that I've got everything ready. I have got my beans. I'm going to take my meat out of that bowl now. I have got ready my meat and my potatoes, my beans and my barley, which have been soaked and rinsed and drained. And I've got my onions, which have been fried, and they're golden around the edges, and they're just starting to soften. I now need to get 2 cups of boiling water. And to that, I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of salt. Okay, that's salting it pretty well. If you like things really salty, just wait till it's cooked because you can't take it out. But 3 teaspoons is right for this amount. Okay, so I'm just putting 3 teaspoons of salt in here. using the beautiful Olsen's, and you know that this special deal is still going on. If you go to the Olsen's website and put in the code MMCC10, you get 10% off all their salt. It's my favourite. I am loving it. Okay, give that a stir. So this is 2 cups, 500 mils of boiling water with 3 teaspoons of salt. I've got a pepper grinder ready because I'm going to do some pepper. Yeah, 500 mils of water, 2 cups. Is that what that is? Yeah, perfect. That should be the right amount. I've got about 550 here, but I may not use it all. So I might just put a tiny bit more salt in because I have got a little bit more water than my 500 mils. Okay, make sure it's dissolved. Okay, so have we got all the elements ready? Yes. So now what I'm going to do is turn my pot back on again. And as soon as it gets hot, I'm going to put the meat in. And I'm not really going to brown it or sear it, but I am going to put it in the bottom of the pot, okay? So that it will get the brown from the bottom of the pot and the flavour. And remember, we've got all this caramelised onion in the bottom that's also going to add flavour. So as soon as it starts to sizzle, what I'm going to do is put the meat in, and then I'm just going to layer potatoes, beans, onions, potatoes, beans, onions, and I want to finish with potatoes, okay? My one in the oven finished with onions, which I didn't like the look of. I was just trying it out to see if it mattered. I prefer to have the potatoes on the top, but you could also just toss it all together and put it in. It wouldn't matter. So let's put our, and if you've got fat on your meat, put the fat side down, okay? And I want a little sizzle. So I'm not really browning, I think Robin asked. I'm just, you know, getting it going, okay? So you need it on your stove top. Put your meat in like this. Okay, meat is in. Now I'm going to take a handful of, I'm just going to mix my barley beans, and I'm going to take a handful and just put it on top. I'm going to spoon on some onion. And you see like that, I've got 3 layers now. And I'm going to turn that down to, I've got that on high still, actually, for a minute. And now I'm going to put in my potatoes in between and around. I'm going to add some more of the beans, barley, and, there's a piece of meat in there. Beans, barley, and beans, I should say. Onions next, finish the onions. Just going to spread them out, okay? I'm going to finish with some more beans and the rest of the barley. And now I'm going to put the rest of the potatoes on the top. Okay, that's it. Everything is in, except for the water and pepper. So I could have peppered the layers actually. I probably should have along the way. So if you haven't done it already, I would pepper the layers. But I'm definitely peppering that. And I'm going to put a tiny, tiny bit more salt on the top. Okay, so I've peppered and salted the top. And I'm going to now put the water in. Okay, well, the water's actually taking the pepper down with it, so that's good. And, yeah, 2 cups was exactly right for this pot. This pot might be a bit small, okay? I would say that if you've come to the top of your pot like I have, it just might be a little bit small. See how you go, okay? Now, bring this to the boil, put it on high. What Yvonne used to do that I love is she used to put a paper bag on the top, and I do this for her to remember Yvonne. Use baking paper by all means, but I just, the eggs, thank you. Thank you, thank goodness someone is paying attention. Okay, so I'm going to put my eggs in. This pot's definitely not going to be big enough, but anyway, we'll see what happens. So I'm going to put my eggs in. Thank you, Danny. What am I going to do when we stop doing these sessions? How am I going to cook without you? Like, seriously, you remind me of everything I need to do that I forget in my excitement. Okay, I'm burying the eggs in this, okay? 4 eggs. We'll see what they look like. Okay, okay, so here we go. So it looks beautiful, actually. It looks lovely. See, I've got everything there, including my eggs. Thank you, Danny. Now, as soon as it comes to the boil, I'm going to put a paper bag on. It's the same as, you know, a fancy cartouche that they make, the paper when you do a stew or you do an ossobuco, you might put the paper on top. This is the old version of that, which I love. I just love. So I just take my paper bag, just crush it up a bit, and I'm going to put it on top as soon as it comes to the boil. If there's any beans that have lost the inside and the shells have come off, I just take them off because you don't really need those. Starting to boil, starting to boil. Ah, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to tell you people who want it to be ready at 6 o'clock tomorrow night what to do. So if you are wanting it for that, I would not bring it to the boil now. I would just layer the ingredients and set it aside. And then in a few hours, take over from now. Bring it to the boil, put the paper on, put the lid on, and put it in the oven. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope it does to those of you who want it for the fast. I know that's Esther and Ulrich. I hope that that's okay. You can also cook it, take it out of the oven a bit earlier and just reheat it later. That also works fine. I just won't know till we take this one out of the oven to see if it's a disaster or not cooking it so far ahead. Okay, so yum. It already, okay, boiling nicely. Can we see that? It's boiling in one part anyway. All right, how's everyone going? Okay, if you need it to be ready this afternoon, then you need to cook it on a higher temperature. And you know what? I have to have a look what it is. I think it's 150. So you will do exactly the same. Your oven needs to be on 150 and you cook it for 4.5 hours, okay? Have you got time? Yep, just. So bring it to the boil, 150, into the oven exactly the same way, and it'll be fantastic. Okay, it's boiling. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to put this on top, this paper. And I'm just trying to cover all of it, I guess, with the paper is the idea. It's very rustic. I love it. I just love it. I mean, who would have thought a paper bag, right? And now I'm going to put on my lid. It is here. And I'm going to put it in the oven. Okay, I'm going to take it over here for a moment. Because mine, I'm going to just turn my oven up. Oh. It's hot. Turn my oven on. All right, so this is the one that I did yesterday. Let me just get a board and put it in a better position. Oh, you can see it there, right? Okay. So, I can't tell you the slow cooker measurements, but I've got a feeling that we did a thing for Breville a few years ago. If you look up Cholent in the slow cooker Breville, you will find our recipe, and we, I think, gave the measurements or the quantities and all that stuff for the slow cooker, but I can't tell you off the top of my head because I don't really use it from day to day. Yes, so bring it to the boil later, Esther, but just hold off for a minute because I want to just see what this one looks like. This has been in my oven. I put it in at 9:30 a.m. yesterday. I did 2 hours at 130 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature for the first 2 hours. And then I turned it down to 100 degrees and it has been cooking ever since. Till about 9 o'clock this morning when I turned it down to 80 degrees. I got nervous. So let's have a look. Okay. Oh, it is so dark. It's actually amazingly, I'll show you what it looks like. It's really, really dark and really beautiful. I'm going to take it out of the pot and I'm going to, oh, it's so good, actually. So you want to dig deep and you want to get down to the meat and the potato. So the bone from the meat. Remember I did the meat on the bone. The meat has come completely off the bone and the bone is now, you know, easy to remove. So let me get the meat. Oh, the meat is unbelievably soft. There's lots of juice in this, and you could, if you find it too juicy, I guess what you could do is put it on the stove top and just boil it for a few minutes and get rid of some of that juice. but you don't really need to. I mean, that's it. So that is my cholent finished. I don't think it's, well, let me tell you, is it overcooked? The meat is, it's extraordinarily soft. It's actually, it's really good. I mean, it is a slow cooked, it's a, you know, parts of it are mushy, that's what happens to it. And that's not a bad thing, but the potatoes hold their shape, which is what I love, and they go this deep golden brown colour, and the taste of them, the texture of the potato is remarkable, which is why you need a waxy potato for this, not a floury one. It's going to be too hot to eat. It's got this creamy, sticky texture that is so unique to cholent. I would like a tiny bit more salt on this for me, but I think it's absolutely beautiful. So let's just look at the timing for this. For I know those of you who want it for tomorrow night, you're going to have to cook it for, that's 12 to 12 tomorrow night. It's a bit long. You know what? I would probably leave it till 4 o'clock. Leave it aside, come back at 4 o'clock, bring it to the boil, put the cover on it, the paper bag or the baking paper, put the lid on it, and then put it in 2 hours at 130 degrees, and then turn it down at about, 7 o'clock to 110 till you're ready to eat it. Now, as far as leaving your oven on all night, I've got two things to say. This is actually so delicious. I'm really happy with it. And I didn't try a bean, actually. It's just fantastic. It's really, really, like I could just really want to sit down and eat the whole bowl. It just takes me back to somewhere, I don't know where. I want to read you Yvonne's story as well. This is really good. This is really, but some people need the paprika in it, or the bone marrow, or smoked bones to make that more Sephardi, or I guess Hungarian flavour. You have to decide how you want it flavoured. This is a very simple Ashkenazi version with the flavour of what's in it and salt. That's it. Okay, so what was I going to tell you? I want to say one more thing. If you are follow the rules of Yom Kippur very strictly and you don't want to turn your oven down or do anything like that, then you do need to get it on before 3 o'clock or 3:30, so you can turn it down to 100 before the fast starts. But everybody else who doesn't follow that can do it the way I suggested, which is probably to put it on at 3 o'clock. Okay. Now, let me just tell you. Can I just read to you just a little snippet about Yvonne that I love so much? This was written by Lauren, my friend and co-author, who said this. My mother-in-law Yvonne Fink, with her larger-than-life personality, also cooked from the heart and was known for her most delicious heimische food. Homey food, that's what that means. Her chicken balls, also in this book, and cholent are now legendary in the family. Born in Melbourne at 18, she married Leon, a Polish immigrant, and with the help of her own Polish bubba, Golda, she was introduced to wonderful Eastern European dishes. It was time she learnt to cook. After all, she had Leon's family to impress. Bubba set about teaching Yvonne to be the best Yiddisher Jewish mama, encouraging her to cook all the favourites from the home country. Being a good cook gave her great confidence, especially at such a young age. So that's Yvonne, and Lauren tells the very funny story about how they used to go and stay with Yvonne in Melbourne over Yom Kippur, and Yvonne would have this cooking. Their room was next to the kitchen, so while they're fasting all night and all day, all they can smell is cholent, and it's just killing them. Can you imagine not eating and having to smell this all day? So she tells the story with humour. It's very funny, and I always think about Yvonne when I make this dish, because it's very unique, and it's absolutely one of those dishes that takes you back to the old world. So that is the cholent. I'm really, really happy with it. As I said, a tiny bit more salt would be good. I think yesterday when I did it, I put 2 teaspoons in the water, not 3. I was doing it from memory. But the meat, and this is beef rib. which I got from Field to Fork in Sydney. It's outstanding. I actually prefer it to brisket, I'm going to say that. It's just, I think, an easier meat to slow cook. So that is my cholent. Any questions, anyone, about what you're doing before I leave you? Because I don't want to leave you in the lurch with your cholent not done properly. I think everyone follows what I've done. It really looks amazing. It really looks so just so interesting and so unique and so iconic and Jewish, and that's what I love about it. We've got another recipe actually in the same book called Chicken to Beat from Lily Weitzman, and her story tells why these slow cooked dishes work so well. So her family was from Iraq, and they used to live in a town. They didn't have an oven at home. They used to take, on the way to the synagogue on Friday night, they would drop their pot of stuffed chicken stuffed with rice, at the local bakers, who would put it in the oven, and then on the way back from synagogue on Saturday lunchtime, they would pick up their pot, which had cooked overnight, and had take it home for lunch. And that's also a great dish, that chicken to beat. It's amazing. Okay, so yes, Deborah, once the whole dish comes to the boil, remember we put the meat in the bottom and then we let the fat down. I did my bones up just because, layered everything on top, water over, bring to the boil, paper, lid, 130 degrees for 2 hours, and then 100 degrees for 20 hours or whatever. Whatever you need. It could be 18, it could be 20, it could be 22. If you need it for tonight, you need to cook it at 150 for about 4.5 hours. That's what I was going to say. Now, sometimes my oven switches itself off in the middle of the night for some reason. And sometimes when I've made this, I've woken up in the morning and the oven's been off. Don't panic, just turn it on again. Also, make sure there's nothing that's going to catch fire if you're leaving it on all night. I'm a bit nervous to tell you to leave your oven on all night. I know I've often done it for things, so just take care and make sure there's nothing that can catch fire and nothing that's going to burn. What I suggest you do, if you can, is have a little peek in before you go to bed and just make sure that it's not completely dry and burning, right? You can see there's actually so much liquid in this now, and I'm going to take this liquid and I'm going to spoon it over the cholent. It really, really looks good. I'd love to hear what all of you think of it when you make it and taste it. You can see how lovely it looks. I mean, it's hard to see on it, but it really is just, want to dive into this and eat the whole thing. So I've covered the oven, I've covered the options for cooking time. Those of you who want it perfect for tomorrow night, you're going to do it at 3 o'clock. If you can only do it now, do it now. It'll be fine. You might just want to turn it down to, 80 degrees tomorrow afternoon. See how you go. Good luck with all of yours who are doing it for the first time. And remember, if you want to pimp it up, you can add paprika when you saute the onions, some sweet paprika or some hot paprika. You can add some carrots, you could add marrow bones, you could add some smoked bones in there as well. So there's lots of options to make it a different flavour profile. But this flavour profile is me, a simple Ashkenazi heritage girl from Melbourne who grew up on fried onions and potatoes. Oh, that's funny. Is my mum laughing is the question. All right, I'm sure my sister is. So that's it. So simple, but the time is what gives it its complexity of flavour. And it's really, really... And yeah, someone asked if it freezes. I think it probably would freeze quite well. I think you can do anything with it. It's actually really yummy. I could just keep eating it. Excellent. It's really good. All right, that's it. So to everyone who is fasting, have a good fast. Hope it's an easy one. And to everyone else, have a lovely day, and I hope you enjoyed the cholent. Question, why do we cover with paper? Excuse me for chewing. I think what it does, it just helps keep the juices in. It keeps the steam in. It creates a little cooking bubble so nothing escapes. I think that's part of the reason. So enjoy your cholent. I hope that you all enjoy it. It's my cup of tea, I must say. I can't even remember where I first tried it. I know that our neighbour Miriam used to do break the fast with cholent when I was young, and I don't even think I liked it then. I think I grew up to like it later in the years. but I'm really happy. I've got this now to start the fast, and I've got another one in the oven which will be perfect to break the fast. So I'm going to be sick of Cholent on Friday. Hopefully I will see you all on Friday when I will be back making a beautiful sweet, which I haven't made for a few years, and we're just going to wing it together. And hopefully you just need lots of dried apricots. Buy the diced ones if you can, it'll save you some time. We need Australian dried apricots, not the Turkish, okay, or Californian. So thank you everyone, and have a good fast everyone, and thanks for being with me. And if you're in lockdown, stay home and stay safe. Everyone else, stay safe, and thank you for sharing the morning with me. It's been fun. See you all. Bye.